Well, this definitely didn't go as expected.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not bad. It's bad, but it could be worse.
Oh, really?
Yes, today we are ranking new albums from classic nu metal bands, the cutoff being 2020 and onwards, and we're starting with Soulfly and Totem in 2022. So Soulfly, more of a groove metal band these days, but considering my low expectations from their last few records, this one really knocked me on my ass. It's no Soulfly or Primitive, but I honestly wouldn't rank this one too far behind. It's definitely one of their better records overall. Tracks like Filth Upon Filth and Scouring the Vial are easily among their heaviest tracks to date, with the latter even featuring John Tardy of death metal legends Obituary. All of that arguably making this the heaviest album on this entire list, I would say. There's honestly no good reason why this band should be dropping one of their best albums this late in their career, but I had so much fun with it, so we're going to start on a strong note, putting this one at S tier. Unfortunately, next we have Papa Roach with Ego Trip, also in 2022.
I got a madman living in my head, man. He ain't got no sense, man. He ain't paying rent. Endless trash!
Let's be real, these guys haven't been nu metal in a long time, and this is just the latest demonstration of the more butt rock direction they've gone over the years. And I don't really have a problem with rap in general. In fact, I love the stuff from the 90s, especially stuff like Wu-Tang Clan and Nas. As for more current material, love Aesop rock. And I even enjoyed what Papa Roach did on Infest in terms of the rap vocals, but their incorporation of it here on songs like Stand Up and Swerve is some of the lamest, lowest common denominator bullshit I've ever heard. Just awful, and when paired with the attempts at Imagine Dragons radio rock, it's like a singularity of all the worst elements of the modern music business. It feels like an AI-generated album cobbled together by a bunch of corporate suits straight out of a cynical Paul Verhoeven film.
Nuke 'em. Get them before they get you.
Just the worst. This one's going to D tier. Then we have Disturbed with Divisive in 2022.
Hey, yo! Have you had enough of it? Of the blind are leading the blind. Hey, yo!
I was actually kind of psyched to hear this album after they dropped the Hey You single, which I would consider among their best. Definitely something I would throw in a Disturbed playlist, but unfortunately the tracks outside of this were pretty mediocre. There are some moments here and there that are kind of fun, like the title track and Unstoppable, but for the most part this is another very uniform track list of very mid material. And the ballad with Ann Wilson is also pretty lame, even as a big fan of Heart. I moved on from it pretty quickly, and I haven't really thought of it much since until I decided to do this list. Not terrible, just really dull. I'm going to put it at C tier. Then, kind of an interesting one here, we have Dope with Blood Money Part 0 in 2023. Now, I'll tell you guys, I fully expected to hate every ounce of this album, but I really didn't. Like, the lyrics are cringe, the music is pretty corny, but damned if Dope haven't perfectly tapped into my inner cringy 16-year-old angst with this one. The guitars can still get pretty heavy, especially on that thrashy opening riff of No Respect, and some chuggy industrial hooks that take me back to their debut with the likes of Best of Me and Choke. But alternatively, the dancey DJ vibes of Believe and Dead World are admittedly going to be a bit much if you take yourself too seriously. And who knew a Dope cover of The Cure's Love Song wouldn't be a complete train wreck? Not a great album, or even really a good album by any means, but pretty fun if you turn your brain off and just go with it. I'm actually putting this one at B tier, kind of at the lower end, and I would not really recommend this to most people watching.
Well, Jay, would you recommend? No.
Mike, would you recommend?
No.
Then we have HedPE with Califas Worldwide in 2021. Now, they also just dropped 70s Hits from the Pit, but that's a terrible 70s cover album featuring everything from the Ramones to Jimmy Buffett, and I wanted to stick to original music. I still enjoy the first few albums from this band, and despite some pretty terrible lyrics, they've always been one of the more interesting groups in the genre due to their unique fusion of reggae, funk, hip-hop, and punk with the metal elements, and that still comes through pretty well here. Not Today is a foot tapper with a funky hook. Choose Sides in Your Pride got me bobbing my head. Leave 'Em All Behind really leans into the patois style vocals and fun guitar effects. And even when the lyrics get particularly awful, and they do, the instrumentation is generally infectious enough to make up for it. The main thing that drags this down is that it is way longer than it needs to be at 1 hour and 7 minutes. Like, cut like half the track list, especially weaker songs like Across the Universe, Stand or Fall, Crazy I Like, and Hate is a Weapon. Even so, of the options here, I'd be much more likely to choose this one over some of the others, actually. So I'm putting it at C tier, but kind of on the higher end of that tier. All right, big one here, Slipknot with The End So Far in 2022. And this was like the surprise of the year for me. The Chapeltown Rag and the Dying Song almost sound like they could have been on Iowa, which is not a compliment I've paid this band really since Iowa. They're still not quite on that same level, but for modern Slipknot, they're actually both catchy and headbang worthy. Love the chugging riffs, classic pounding percussion, and DJ scratching front and center. Hive Mind also gets super heavy and even brings the keg strikes amidst the grooves and blast beats. Yen is really the only track I actually dislike. Much like Vermilion, this one is just too corny with generic lyrics seemingly written by like a lovelorn preteen.
I would die for Riley. I would die for Riley.
Okay, Haircut, time to prove it.
If you want a slower track though with a little more substance, I'd recommend Medicine for the Dead and also Acidic, which has some almost Faith No More vibes. Love the choral section on Warranty, Hell goes hard, and the powerful arena-worthy anthem Desaad. I even like Adderall, even though it feels completely out of place on this album. I honestly still don't get why so many people hated it and stand by how I felt about it when it came out. I'm putting this one at A tier. All right, Powerman 5000 with The Noble Rot in 2020.
And now for something completely different.
You left black lipstick. Black lipstick.
Kind of a Marilyn Manson vibe to this album, especially on tracks like Play God or Play Dead and Special Effects, while others like Black Lipstick and Strange People Doing Strange Things reach a bit further back into 80s stuff like Depeche Mode. It's not especially new metal, but the songs are catchy and would make for good background music at a like the Matrix style dance club, especially tracks like Movie Blood, which I'm sure I'll catch myself humming later. And even though it's pretty campy, it's not especially cringe or corny despite the kind of teen goth girl appeal. I'm not in love with it, but honestly, it's one of their more consistent records, and I'd say I like it at least as much as the new Dope album. Would definitely choose it over that dull Disturbed album too, so putting this one at B tier. All right, another biggie here, Limp Bizkit with Still Sucks in 2021. Now, unlike many people I know, I don't hate Limp Bizkit. In fact, I still enjoy the first 3 albums for some big, dumb, sing-along fun. Now, unfortunately, this album is bad. Like, the vast majority of it is pretty unlistenable to me, especially since Durst continues to insist on doing acoustic ballads. The In Excess cover is terrible, and Barnacle is just embarrassingly bad. That said, there are some moments I enjoyed on this thing. Dad Vibes is corny, but pretty infectious. Out of Style and Dirty Rotten Biscuit are low-key bangers, and I really like the A Tribe Called Quest sounding stand-up bass on Turn It Up, Bitch. I'd legitimately put those on a playlist for a fun throwback party, but it's not enough to save the album as a whole. This one is also going to D, but I would still rather listen to this than Papa Roach. All right, we got Sevendust with Blood and Stone in 2020. Love this band's early material, especially Home, and Lejean continues to be the major draw here as one of the strongest vocalists in the genre. He's giving an A-tier performance as usual, but unfortunately it feels like everyone else is kind of phoning it in. There is nothing even remotely interesting about the songwriting of the instrumentation, save for a moment here and there like on Against the World, Desperation, and Kill Me. But those last 2 track names also kind of sum up my thoughts by the time I get to the end of the album. Again, not terrible, just very bland and kind of monotonous, generic hard rock, lacking any real personality. It feels weird to put them below some of the others here. I really didn't expect that, but the reality is that those albums were at least fun, and this one just isn't, so it's going to C tier. All right, Static X, Project Regeneration, Volume 1 in 2020. This was their first album in 11 years and released 6 years after Wayne's death, but is largely made up of vocal tracks he had recorded prior to his passing. It sees the return of the original lineup, including some contributions from guitarist Trip Eisen. I'm always on the fence about stuff like this, especially since Wayne was estranged from the rest of the band prior to his death, and as cool as that new cyborg costume is, I can't help but feel like it's someone wearing Wayne's skin and parading it around on stage for profit.
Give me sugar.
Overall, though, the tracks are a pretty solid representation of their chuggy industrial sound, albeit sometimes feeling like lesser retreads of previous material. But I can't say I wasn't banging my head through some of these, especially Accelerate, Bring You Down, My Destruction, and Follow. Al Jorgensen of Ministry also shows up on closing track Dead Souls. Not half bad, just kind of mixed feelings here. I'm gonna put this one at B tier, and I'll be doing a full discography tier list when they drop volume 2 later this year. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that, and also hit the like button if you're enjoying the video. Comment below how you might rank these differently. But moving on, we have Drowning Pool with Strike a Nerve.
I strike a nerve if I breathe a word. I can't go forward 'cause I can't be heard.
Your music's bad and you should feel bad.
Now, I haven't had any sort of interest in this band post-Sinner, so it's been a while since I heard what they even sound like now. And I was kind of surprised at the somewhat more industrial metal meets Faith No More sound of Hate Against Hate, and that sounds like it could be interesting, but it quickly becomes apparent that it's not. I think it was around the title track where the vocal delivery already started to wear on me. Such incredible lyrics, too, on Choke as, "Nothing's real but this pain I feel." Lots of just really lame, dinky rhyme schemes like that. And then Racing to a Red Light is like the worst version of a modernized hair metal ballad. Pretty awful stuff to the point that it was hard to even get through, putting this one at D tier. I can't decide which is worse, this or Papa Roach. But then we have Korn with Requiem in 2022. Now, this is not the best Korn album by a long shot. It's not even the best modern Korn album, as I would give that award to The Nothing. But this is still an album I would put in the upper part of their discography, thanks to great tracks like Start the Healing, My Confession, and Worst is on Its Way. It feels like they just wanted to have fun with this one, and while it's pretty paint by numbers, it understands the assignment and entertained me start to finish more than most of their albums from the past 20 years. My Confession in particular really feels like the band coming together and working that old magic in the vein of Follow the Leader and Issues. There are definitely some lower points, but nothing I would consider bad or even skippable, because this thing is only 33 minutes, which I also really appreciate. Check out my Korn tier list too for my thoughts on their full discography, but on this particular list, I'm putting this one at a pretty easy A tier. And then we have Deftones with Ohms in 2020. Now let's be real, this album is leaps and bounds better than anything else on this list. Like, there should be like 5 tiers between this and the albums below it. And it's also the only one that made a best albums of the year list in that year. Especially after my disappointment with Gore, this was a real treat, and I honestly put it in like my top 5 albums for the band with not a single dud in the track list. You've got Genesis really setting the tone with great atmosphere, Urantia is like drifting on a cloud, while alternatively The Link is Dead feels like the tension building tightening of a string ready to snap. Radiant City has another incredible bass hook, and then the title track is just the perfect closer with another earworm guitar riff. The perfect balance of both the band's heaviness and more blissful atmospheric qualities. It's going to S tier. Y'all check out this playlist for plenty more new metal related rankings and videos, and again, let me know down in the comments how you might rank these differently. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.